As a startup founder, your success in realizing your vision, whatever that is, ultimately hinges on your ability to exercise leadership, whether that be internally with your employees and team building, whether it be with your customers. As an early stage startup, there's a lot of leadership that has to happen with cross-functional stakeholders, and then ultimately, pacing the change of transformation in the industry that you're presumably out after. Yet leadership in itself tends to be this black box that is seldom really discussed inside of startup books or Silicon Valley nomenclature or vernacular. But uh, last fall, back in September, Paul Graham, who I have a lot of respect for, released an essay on founder mode, right? Which came out of a talk that Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, did at a Y Combinator event. I'm not a big fan of Y Combinator, but I've got a lot of respect for Chesky and what he's done with Airbnb. Right? I think it's an anomaly, and there's a lot to learn there. And immediately, I mean, the premise that was interpreted by founders was that when you go into founder mode, you're stripping out like middle layers of management and like you are, the one calling the shots. And what immediately happened was that, founders started putting out their LinkedIn posts with the little flex emojis about how they're taking back their company and use that as sort of confirmation bias, and creating a hero complex that you are the chosen one. I don't think that's what those guys were saying at all. And so today I want to shred the myth of founder mode and instead talk about modalities in leadership. And when you unpack, Graham's essay, what he's really saying is that as you're scaling an organization from, call it 1 to 10 people to 100 to 1,000, there's different gates and different layers that come into place. And the point of the essay was really talking about, you're often told to bring in outside managers to start running your teams and making decisions and start decentralizing your organization, and that often fails. And I agree with him. By the way, I've gone through this. I've brought in folks from large companies to run parts of our business, and it is probably the number one way to let mediocrity creep into your organization. And so I think what Graham and Chesky are saying is that you need to fight against that at all costs. And what that requires is a different modality. It requires a different way of thinking. It's not about you as the founder as this sort of centralized authoritarian regime. As an example, I read a blog post from the Brex CEO the other day, a decent blog post about their journey over the last year and the progress they made. But it started out as a year into founder mode, and I'm like, well, the essay's only been out for 5 months. What were you doing the 7 months before? But it really talks about how, everything became centralized, and he was the only one that could approve every feature that went into product releases, which is interesting. But the result of that was that there was much greater organizational alignment around fewer releases and more strategic intention put into those product releases. To me, that's the outcome, right? And that drove growth for them across every dimension, which I think is fantastic. In fact, we're moving over to Brex as a side note. And I think there's a lot to learn there, other than it's not about making yourself the center of the puzzle. So what that means to me is really understanding, depending on the maturity of your organization and the priorities and the fires, understanding what modality you need to move into. Sometimes it is decentralized. If this is like technical level decisions, you probably don't need to be involved in all of those. If this is about building your culture and the principles by which your business operates so that teams can be empowered to align with the vision, that's what founder mode is. That's what the modality is. And it's about knowing when to insert yourself or drop into different conversations. Chesky talks about having to approve every press release. But then he also talks about after a certain period of time, he could back out of that because he got the organization realigned with his vision. And I'll give you an example, a couple examples from my experience. I've been known to, when things get off track, tend to drop in and just inject chaos and start firing people. Back in the middle of 2023, I fired my entire engineering team on the same day. 30 minutes later, we had a completely different organization. And the reason for that is because mediocrity had crept in. We had a couple of guys running around dumb and dumber that we're trying to do all that startup-y stuff around shipping MVPs, and this is how we're going to do it, not thinking about the long-term vision, not thinking about the infrastructure that needed to be built to really pull levers of scale. And so, and the environment became toxic. And so I wasn't really in founder mode, but I did the intervention that I thought I needed to. And as a result, we're in a much better place to lead an industry. And I think maybe the one that might resonate most is I'm a big believer that leaders and team members and roles ought to focus on individuals' comparative advantage. Like, what are the things that you're better at or particularly skilled at that no one else is? Focus on executing that and then get people in roles that they can do that themselves. And so one area, as we were growing and continue to grow, Inflection CX, our contact center outsourcing business, isn't operating the call center. It's a virtual call center, but I built the assumption or had the assumption that at one time I was a pretty good operator. I could run a call center, with the best of them, but that's not my focus today, right? And there's a lot of people in the world that know how to run a contact center operations well. And so my assumption was, well, let's bring some people in to do that. And I can focus on big picture, I can focus on finance, all the other stuff founders have on the plate. And what happened is we ended up burning through several ops managers because we brought people in that were political animals, right? Or that didn't understand our vision, our culture. And so mediocrity crept in. And let me tell you something else that happens when you start bringing in people from large organizations that don't understand the startup culture is beyond mediocrity coming in, drama creeps in. And if drama doesn't exist, it gets manufactured. And it tends to be because people that are either in small pockets inside of large organizations or are managers inside of an organization know how to play the political game. And startups have no space for that. And so what happened is this last summer, I came in, realized that there were just unnecessary drama, unnecessary fires all over the place. And I refactored in coding terms or in sort of business terms, restructured the entire organization in a day, and got rid of some folks that no longer needed to be around, and realigned people. And I got re-involved in areas much lower down in the organization. So call it founder mode. I don't. I think of it as understanding and diagnosing where, again, that my influence and expertise and perspective is most valuable to realize the long-term vision. And so we had clients that were pissed off and, our attrition rate was high. But following that, what happened was our customers today are happier than they've ever been because I did get involved in coaching conversations with supervisors and selecting the right ops team, getting the client engagement team together. We put new team members in place and expanded some roles for people that were killing it. And we're at a place now where we're positioned for the most growth that we ever have been. And it's because of that diagnostics and adapting your leadership style and knowing where, to focus. And then now I am able to step back and focus on other areas of the business. And we've reinstilled our values in the proposition. So the key message here for founders is step back. I think founder mode, read into what Graham and Chesky are really saying there. So take your LinkedIn post with all your flex emojis and put that right back into ChatGPT where it came from. And put a little more humility into your leadership because you're not going to get it right every day or even ever. And keep iterating and really step back and constantly evaluate your team and the situations and where you need to be more directly involved to shape those outcomes and where you can step back.